And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Survivor podcast. Ryan and I are back to recap another episode of Survivor 46, another great episode of Survivor 46, episode 10. We're into the double digits now. What's up, Ryan?
Dylan, I'm doing great. Like you said, it was an awesome episode. The season is in full swing at this point. Some are calling it potentially the new standard for the new era. And if you had told me that our next Survivor Meltdown would be over Applebees, I would not have believed you. But here we are. So
this was an all-time episode in a lot of ways. Just so much to talk about. I can't wait to get into it. A lot of people are saying that, this season feels very old school with a lot of the character moments, and I could not agree more. Just so ridiculous, stuff that you don't see anymore happening in Survivor 46. Excited to talk about it as my mic falls. Excited to talk about it. Excited to get into it. But yeah, what a moment. What an episode from Liz.
We said this a few weeks ago. Liz is somebody kind of like Emily last season, where we had some initial reactions after the first episode. Some people weren't on board, and then you give it a few episodes, her stock is up. People are loving it with Emily, and then same thing for Liz. Ever since the Tevin move, Liz has kind of been thrust into the spotlight, and she has been, delivering for sure.
It's funny because literally we were talking about on this podcast not too long ago. We were like, what is Liz's purpose on the season? Because she kind of just came off as like I have so much money. Haha. I have a ton of money. I have all these businesses. And that's kind of all we heard from her. And then she was like not there for a bunch of episodes. And then she pulls off a blindside. And then now she is turned into a perennial character on the season. I mean, kind of crazy. But let's talk. What were we going to say, Ryan?
I was just going to say really quickly, like I always forget, and we've seen this show for 46 seasons, and I always forget this every season, that the editors are sometimes, not always, but sometimes masterful storytellers. Like you think about like the foreshadowing with like Carson and the fire on the glasses, like you see other things that are hinted at, the whole Bruce and Katora storyline. But like this season, if you had told me that episode 1 or 2, Liz talking about, oh, I can't have coconut, I can't have this, I can't have this, I was like, okay, she's just having a hard time out there. They're just kind of doing camp stuff. I did not think that was going to lead into this whole Applebees saga. So the editors are like masters at storytelling sometimes.
That's actually a great point. I did not think of that. And it's so funny because I don't think I've spoke about this on this podcast yet this season, but it's something that's been crossing my mind. Is I always wondered, I'm someone with a lot of food allergies also. So I've always wondered, like, and nowhere near what Liz has. I'm allergic to peanuts, tree nuts. So it's a pretty straightforward, simple allergy. It's nothing crazy. I could eat coconut. But I've never really ate coconut in my life. Like there's been no reason for me to. So it's funny, but I always imagine like, what if I went on Survivor, what would happen? Like there's plenty of rewards that are like, oh, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Well, I wouldn't be able to eat that reward. Like I'm wondering, like if knowing Liz has like that type of allergy, are they like, she can't eat, I believe she said she's allergic to nuts also. So if she can't eat peanut butter, let's say, right? I don't know if they would because of her allergy, I feel like they would maybe just go for something else and not do a specific reward where they have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches where they know that one contestant cannot eat it. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, obviously with Liz, she has so many restrictions that it's literally impossible to accommodate basically. But I always wondered, like, if I went on Survivor and they knew I had allergies, like, would they offer a peanut butter sandwich as part of the reward? I don't know. You get what I mean? Like, I always wonder how that would be handled, but I guess we're kind of learning right now. So it's pretty funny.
It's weird. I feel like I've seen them do both. I feel like in this new era, they're kind of more strict on things. They kind of, make it harder on people, and maybe they're not offering other things for people with allergies. But I feel like in the past, I've seen them try to accommodate. Like, this is not on the same level as allergies, but like I remember back in Millennials Gen X, when Will won rewards when he was 18, they were like, oh, we're going to like give you alcohol and stuff, but we're going to have soft drinks for Will. So I feel like I've seen them accommodate people in the past, but I guess they just, for some things with Liz, you can't always accommodate. But yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, the fact that she's allergic to all these fruits, she's allergic to chicken, like there's very little that she can eat, which kind of culminated in this amazing moment.
And we can't let this Liz moment distract us from the fact that we also had an incredible blindsided move this episode with Tiff going out, a huge blindside pulled off by Maria. And definitely, I would say the best of the season so far, and also probably one of the best of the new era. This was textbook Survivor. I mean, you catch somebody who is way too comfortable, right? And a huge threat in the game, and also has an idol, and you say, if we do not get them out this episode, we may never be able to get them out. Textbook Survivor. Maria pulls off a phenomenal blindside in a 5-3 vote. Tiffany goes home with the idol in the pocket. Second week in a row that somebody goes out with an idol in the pocket, and third time this season, a new Survivor record that somebody goes out with an idol in their pocket.
Technically 4. I mean, you're right that it's 3 where Jem, Hunter, and Tiffany all got voted out with idols in their pocket. But don't forget, Ranzin left with an idol in his pocket too. So you're right. I think this is across all seasons the new record for people leaving with idols not played. No idols have been used this season, and with no advantages in the game either. I think people are liking it too, Dylan, because this does feel very old school season, because a lot of the drama, a lot of chaos, and these votes where you're not relying on idols, you're not relying on advantages. We haven't seen anything used yet. So it feels very refreshing in this new era where there's a lot of gimmicks in the game. It feels really cool. And it almost felt like Micronesia to me, Dylan, because this screamed to me like the girls vote out Ozzy with an idol in his pocket. And then the very next week, Jason finds an idol, and it's like, it's not going to happen to me again. The girls aren't going to do that. And then back-to-back weeks. So it felt very similar where Tiffany... I love Tiffany. I think Tiffany's great. Would love to see her again. But you're right, where she got too comfortable. The Q vote seemed a little too obvious, and she just saw Hunter leave with it. People know about it. You got to play your idol, no matter what.
Yeah, 5-3 vote, as I said. Ben, Charlie, Liz, Maria, and Q voting for Tiffany, whereas Kenzie, Tiffany, and Venus voted for Q. So Kenzie, who originally had the idea to blindside Tiffany, gets kind of blindsided by Maria and left out of the vote. Maria steals her move. I think that was good foreshadowing last week, where we kind of got that whole storyline. Like, Maria wanted that to be her move, and at the end of the day, she gets the job done did not even need Kenzie to get it done, which is just incredible stuff. I said last week, well, you know what? What I was going to say, we'll leave it for later in the podcast, because I think this is a whole other conversation I want to talk about. I was going to talk about Kenzie, but I just want to talk about the actual move specifically. Yeah. They originally had 4 people, right? So at the end of the day, they had 4 people who were willing to blindside Tiffany, right? That was Ben, Charlie, Maria, and Q. They needed one more person, either Venus or Liz. Obviously, that's a tough choice, because you got Venus on one hand, who literally has strictly been out there to cause chaos. You cannot trust her to keep it, safe from Kenzie or from even Tiffany. And then you have Liz, who, because of the Applebees moment, was so because of the Applebees moment was so anti-Q that it was unclear if she was going to be able to get on board with this. So they choose to go with Liz. She ends up going along with the plan. What was your whole thought here, Ryan, on the decision to go with Liz and not Venus? And, obviously it was the right decision. Do you think that if they had gone with Venus instead, this move still happens? What were your thoughts on the entire decision there?
I think it was a tough choice, because both Venus and Liz are very, very anti-Q, and both could have easily just said no, or would have blown up the plan completely. So either way, Maria had to take that risk. And that's why I thought this was a great episode for Maria. Obviously really puts her in the front runner position. We've been saying for weeks who's our front runner. Now seems pretty clear that it's Maria. Could be Charlie, but Maria's really in front right now. And I think that going with Liz, Maria had to, as if you saw, she had to set it up perfectly, where she's like, look, I get that you don't like Q. We all don't like Q. He's very annoying to us, but we can beat him in the end. He's someone that you can sit next to and you can beat. And if we're in final 7, we're at the point in the game where you got to think about who you can beat. And we talked about this last week, that, Liz's only chance to win possibly is against Q and Venus. And we were even texting a few days ago, and we were like, if it's Venus, Q, and Liz, Q probably could possibly win that. Venus might be drawing dead, but Liz really can't sit next to anyone else other than Q and Venus. So that's one reason to keep him. And furthermore, Maria's aware that, Liz kind of lost some agency with the Tevin vote after Q kind of screwed some things up and kind of took the spotlight off her. So she's also giving Liz a chance to like put her name on something, get something on her resume to be part of the Tiffany move. So I think it was the right choice to pick Liz because Venus could have just completely blown it all up. But Maria had to structure it in a way where it was like, we can always get Q later. You can beat him. And this is a better move for you to take out Tiffany, who you probably can't beat in the end. So.
Yeah. And this is what I was going to say before. I said, we'll come back to it.
Yeah.
I said last week, I said that there are going to be some people that lose this game because they completely shut down. They were completely almost blinded by everything that Q has done to the point where they were just completely refusing to work with him, refusing to cooperate with him. Q is, believe it or not, probably, I don't want to say drawing dead with anybody, but he has, you would think at this point in the game, he has a very small chance to win based on everything that's happened, the way that everybody feels about him. He would have to do something insane in terms of turning it around for people to eventually give him votes at the end. At that point, that person that nobody wants to work with could become a very valuable player to play with in the game. We saw it last season, how Caleb worked, even that was on a way smaller scale because it was pre-merged. We saw Emily was basically ousted by the rest of the tribe, and Caleb said, you know what, that could be valuable to me. That's a number. And Maria was the only person after last tribal council where Q was kind of just laying by himself on the beach. And Maria still went over to check if Q was okay. And because of that, Q is willing to work with Maria. I think that Q trusts Maria over anybody left in the game by far. And that was an easy number for her in this vote where she needed a certain amount of votes. And, you know, people like Kenzie, which is, again, who I mentioned before, a lot of people were saying Kenzie was in a good spot, potential winner, obviously could still happen. But I think a major setback for her in this game was her completely shutting down the idea of working with Q again after everything he pulled. I think in this game, it's tough when you completely shut somebody down. You have to sometimes just, you know, internalize those thoughts and, you know, be able to work with somebody again. It is a game for $1 million. Like, but that's the beauty of Survivor is like some people cannot keep the emotion out of it. And Maria is doing a great job of kind of just hiding all that. You know, we don't really know how exactly she feels, but she's doing a very good job of her and Charlie working with Q, despite the fact that, again, we've heard Charlie say that he's wanted Q out a bunch, but at the end of the day, like the smart move was to use him for this vote and potentially keep him further as a number. So props to Maria, props to Charlie for realizing that and using Q as a number to blindside Tiffany here. I said that not being cooperative with Q was going to lose people the game, and it appears that is correct so far. So just masterful work, Survivor 101, Survivor, just textbook Survivor for Maria and Charlie, and you know that alliance who is legitimately running the game right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Where I mean, this is the classic Rob Cesternino strategy. We've seen people do this many times where you take the people on the bottom and you use them to make a move. And it's really important that Maria, not only, like you said, when she went to Q on the beach after the tribal council last week and is like, you know, I see him as a number, but he's also a distraction. And Jeff called Q a smokescreen like once or twice, but like he's somebody that can be a number for you and he likes you. He wants to work with you. And with the Hunter vote, with the Tevin vote, with the Tiffany vote, it's like, everybody is completely misted that like, oh, it's going to be Q so obviously, and then that allows Maria and Charlie to kind of make these moves. And we keep texting every week and we keep saying everybody wants to work with Charlie and Maria. No one's coming for Charlie and Maria. Their names have not been written down once. Although I guess to be fair, Liz's name hasn't been written down either. But the point is that, you know, no one's coming for them. Everybody has them in their plans. And now we're at the final 7, Dylan, where the 3 former Siga, I know Ben's been very quiet on the show. I sometimes forget Ben is there, but the 3 Sigas have 3 of the 7 votes. And, you know, Kenzie and Q are still at odds. Liz and Q are still at odds. Venus is at odds with everybody. So unless Charlie, Maria, and Ben kind of cave on themselves, they could just, at this point, run the table, which, again, I think Maria and Charlie are playing the best game so far, and I always want the best players to win. Having said that, if the final 3 is former Siga, I will be a little disappointed because the entertainment has really come from Q and Venus and people on the former Orange and Purple tribe. So I would love to see someone there get to the end. Not saying again that Charlie and Maria haven't played the best games, because they have, but I want some excitement at the end. So I'm hoping that Sega doesn't run the table, but they easily could if they want to.
Yeah, here's the thing, ready? So I feel like if we're looking at the game going forward, right? I think Maria and Charlie and Ben, you have a strong three. Plus, you have Q as a number now. He's not going anywhere else, right? So you literally have four in a game of 7. And let's keep in mind, we know an idol's being rehidden. We know it's possible that 2 idols could even be rehidden because 2 of them just went out of the game, right? I'm curious, by the way, if just 1 will be rehidden or 2, or if people will realize that 2 could be, maybe 2 will be found, maybe 1 person will find it, everybody will know, and maybe people will still know that there's 1 out there. I don't know. I'm curious to see how that works out with the idols, but if one of those 2 gets an idol, it's wraps. It's wraps for the rest of the cast, I think. Yeah, and even looking going forward, like theoretically, these 2 should be seen as a huge threat even out there. Like now, Maria's made a huge blindside, and Charlie's won consecutive immunity challenges, right?
Yeah.
So Charlie's going to be seen as a physical threat, and Maria is going to be seen as a social threat, strategic threat. I would think that those 2 are going to be seen as threats. The question is, Ben probably not going to flip. Tiffany's out of the game. Liz will be willing to make a move potentially. Kenzie will be willing to make a move potentially. So will Venus. But could you see Q ever like going back to the other side and being like, I'm going to make a big move, and maybe like he's all over the place, but I can't really see Q and Kenzie working together again after everything that's happened. So and especially like having, could you like see Liz, Venus, and Q like all being on the same page to pull off some kind of blindside? Like there's so much chaos there that I don't know if I could see it happening. Especially like without the rest of the people knowing. So it's hard to see a way that Charlie and Maria will at least one of them, I would think, will get probably to the end. Now let's just talk about Tiffany not using her idol here. I was in shock at how comfortable she was. I think it was all the telltale signs of a blindside at Tribal Council in the way that people were speaking. Q even said like, "Oh, I threw a plan out there. Like, we'll see if people take it." Like that would have set alarm bells off for me a little bit if I'm Tiffany. Yeah. And she was just so comfortable. She completely thought it was on Q. It was the same exact, basically, Tribal Council that we've seen multiple times now. Yeah. And she had told us that even if she wasn't going home, she wanted to play her idol, but she did not listen to herself. Ends up going home. Yeah. I'm going to see when this takes into effect, but I'm going to guess that that in either 47 or 48, people will be not afraid to play their idols after what we've seen with this season, because I cannot believe that another person is going home with an idol in a situation that seemed, I don't want to say obvious, because clearly it wasn't obvious to her. It was obvious to us because we know what was happening. But it seems like if you're out there, right, and you know that you're a target, you've heard that you're a target because of your idol. Everyone knows you have that you have your idol. People are going to want to flush the idol from you. Like if I'm out there, you got to also think about like what's the best motive for the other people, right? What are they going to be thinking? And to me, it was just like the obvious time to vote for Tiffany. So I don't want to say I'm surprised, but yeah, I am surprised that she was just completely that confident that she was not going home, which was pretty crazy. But yeah, player idol message to everybody that plays Survivor in the future. So crazy.
Yeah. No, I was definitely surprised too. I think you're right that going forward in 47 and beyond, I think you're going to see people burning idols a lot more just because it's kind of happened at like an increased rate. I mean, I sent you and your brother the stat where it's like we have 24 people in Survivor history that have now gone home with idols in their pocket, not using them, which I guess depending on what your perception is, that could be high or low. But if you look at the numbers, it has really spiked in the last few seasons. So if you look at the data, basically I said 24 people of that, at least more than half has come in the 30s and beyond, and even in 39 to 46, it has been, now like 10 people. So it's really happening at an increased rate. So I think you're going to see people burning idols quicker. I myself, if we ever play, I feel like I would just burn it right away, because I feel like, just knowing like how much our friends know that we love Survivor, I would never live it down if I left with it in my pocket. So I feel like I just burn it no matter what. And I think you're right too, where it's like, it became so obvious that like the Q thing was a smokescreen to us, but it's so hard for Tiffany out there. That Q's target has grown so big that it's like almost disappearing. And I saw Rob talking to James about this on 40 from 43, and I always forget, Dylan, that like Survivor tribal councils are like 2 hours, and we only see like 10 minutes. And to us, they're cherry picking certain things to make you be like, oh, that's a red flag. Why is Tiffany not catching this flag? James was like reminding us that like they go through every scenario. Like, Liz, you had a meltdown, it could be you tonight. Like, Tiffany, like your idol's known, it could be you. Like, Q, you should go home at this point. So Jeff goes through like every situation with them. And I think at that point, when you're kind of sitting there for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe you don't pick up on these flags. But like, to us watching for 10 minutes, it seems so obvious that like Jeff's even saying it's going to be a boring vote, right? Nothing's happening. And Rob was even saying, like, when on the TV screen, not to like tease it for viewers, but like when Jeff is saying like, this is a very straightforward vote, it's going to be a blindside. And when Jeff is like, oh, what could happen tonight? It's like, oh no, it's a very boring vote. So like, he kind of flips his wording based on what's going to happen. So.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. A lot of different good, like, yes, it is a long tribal council, and we're only being shown a small amount of it. And two, that is funny, because he always when he says it's a boring vote, it is a blindside. But yeah, just other than like the actual like Survivor, other than like the actual strategic aspect of this episode, which was phenomenal. Like, I mean, just to go back to the reward challenge, like we didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about it completely in detail. Like, just a complete masterpiece. The whole way that was edited, literally, we learned that it's going to be Applebees, and second, we learned that the actual story here is that Liz gets Applebees with her daughter every single Wednesday before she watches Survivor, and loves the bourbon burger, which is what is being offered at the reward. Literally, the exact order, something that she could eat. She hasn't ate. And oh my goodness. First of all, the actual challenge was fun because I like the suspense of like that anybody can land that thing on the platform at literally any time. So it makes for good TV. But then, oh my goodness, Q wins it, right? Finally, Q wins a challenge, as he spoke about, might be better than 100 challenges, maybe. Q finally wins the challenge. Chooses Tiffany, Maria, and Kenzie to join him. We knew Maria was going to be picked, right? Picking Tiffany and Kenzie was certainly an interesting choice. I do think that inadvertently it probably helped the blind side a little bit, because like she was probably just like very comfortable after talking to Maria and Kenzie there about everything about Q, right? So I think inadvertently it did help her blind side, but I think his purpose for taking it, he even tells us, right, he wants to like reunite with them, which I think we knew was never going to happen. But that whole moment, first of all, I just wanted to say, right, I'm happy that Q stuck with his choice, right? I think, I think that it's important for like these, we've seen in Survivor, people have literally cost themselves the game by picking the wrong person in a reward. Like, these are very important decisions that you have to make. And I think that no matter how insane somebody's going, no matter what type of meltdown somebody's going, I do think it's important, right? If I was the one choosing, if I had won the reward and I had to choose people to come with me, you have to remove the emotions and do what you think is the correct strategic decision. Mm-hmm. So sometimes the correct strategic decision is also the correct, like, appeasing to somebody's emotions per se. Mm-hmm. In this scenario, right, Q is, you can make an argument that if he picks Liz, like, maybe Liz will want to work with him going forward and will be like forever grateful for him for giving her that moment. But also Q told us, he tweeted like, I believe he tweeted or he said it on the show, there's no chance that Liz was going to pick him, right? If she had won the reward. So and she literally voted for him the night before. So I'm happy that he stuck with what he thought was the correct strategic thing to do and didn't just cave in because of her meltdown. And also it made for amazing TV. It was insanely cutthroat to do. I don't know if I would be able to do it if I was out there, but I applaud him for doing that.
Yeah, we've talked about this in the past too, where I've said if I would never want to try to win an individual reward in the merge phase. Maybe if it's like a team merge challenge, then obviously I'll go for it. But like, I never want to be in the spot to kind of pet the pick here and piss off people, especially not with loved ones, especially not with, food where somebody has like an allergy. I never want to kind of put myself in that spot because it can only cause damage. And, Dylan, it not only caused damage to the Liz relationship, which was already kind of nothing anyway, but like you see Ben even being like, this just proves Q's like an ass. Like this proves that Q's like a villain. This proves like Venus hates him. So it not only like hurt Liz that he didn't pick her, but like other potential jury members are like, why would I want to vote for Q in the end? So if Q can win this game, Dylan, it's going to come down to votes from like Soda, Hunter, and Tevin, and then Q might need like one more or two more, because I feel like the people left in the game, like the Bens, the Liz's, the Kenzies, they're not voting for Q at the end. Whereas on the flip side, Venus, we think is drawing dead because she's not getting like the Soda, Tevin, and Hunter votes. So I think that this move from Q, even though like you said, you got to figure out like what's the right strategic move and not put emotions into it. It really did, kind of burn a couple of people that really just saw this was a really kind of selfish move from Q. I think in terms of his choice, you're right. He has to pick Tiffany to kind of keep her comfortable, pick Maria because of that new connection. And if anybody was like, why would you pick Maria? All you got to do is say, Maria came and checked up on me on the beach last night, and that made me feel good. You can just use that as an excuse. The Kenzie choice was kind of weird to me. Like, yes, he wanted to like reunite Yanu, but like, I think Kenzie would understand like if you pick Liz, especially from what we didn't see on the show, which we can talk about. But yeah, I think picking Tiffany, Maria, and Liz would have been the best choice. A, would have avoided that meltdown, and B, would have at least made Q look somewhat redeemable to people. But of course, Q wasn't going to have it. And then do you want to talk about what we didn't see on the show about Q sticking to his guns?
Yeah, apparently Kenzie and Tiffany, I believe Kenzie and Tiffany, they were willing to give up their spot for Liz, and Q was like, no, like I picked the people that I picked, and this is who is going. And again, we could debate all day whether it was the right choice for not picking Liz or not, and we will probably not know that until we know the end outcome of this game. But like when I do say that I'm happy that Q stuck, like I'm happy that he stuck to what he thought was correct in his head. Whereas like a lot of like I'm happy that he did not let people give up their spot, because I don't think that should be allowed. I don't think you should be allowed to give up your spot if you're picked, because the person who's picking has that power for a reason. So I don't like the idea that like, and I'm happy that I guess they were willing to give their spot, and Jeff was like, well, it has to be okay with Q first. And he was like, no, well, that's my decision to make, not because if it's just, what's the point of having people pick if you could just give up your spot and stuff like that? So, yeah, I'm happy that Q stuck to his decision. It would have been funny if that was shown on TV to add to all the drama. But you spoke about something that I thought was very interesting. Just to change the topic a little bit. Here, right? Where people who are drawing dead and people who are not drawing dead. I think Ben has had one of the weirder arcs I've ever seen on this show. I was a huge fan of him in pre-merge. I watched early pre-merge and I said, this is the exact type of guy or type of girl, type of person, type of character who wins in the new era, right? Great personality, right? Just great guy, right? Like people are really drawn to him, like kind of like an eccentric type personality where like him making moves would like hide behind his like wild personality, and people are blinded by that, and then he kind of goes all the way to the end because people really like him, and he ends up winning at the end. However, his edit has gone from that rock star type guy in the pre-merge to now the only time we see him on the screen is when he's like, nah, Q's the worst. Like, Q's terrible. Like, I hate Q. Like, what has happened with this? Like, what is going on? So I think that's been really, really funny. Like, we basically only saw like positive confessionals for Ben for the first 70% of the season. And now like every time we see him on the screen, he's like, I hate Q. He's terrible. Like, hilarious like change in arc there, which is, and one of the weirder ones I've ever seen, which is kind of hilarious. But if we're talking about in general, like people who I think are drawing dead, this could be a tough take. I don't. There's still so much time left in the game. There's still idols to be found. We did see Marianne make her signature move until Final 7. Somebody could find an idol and make their signature move right now, and completely flip the game on its head. But I almost feel like I'm wondering if I should wait longer for this hot take or not. I almost think Q has a higher chance to win than Ben.
Okay, so I was actually going to say, like, if you were going to ask me who I think is, again, drawing dead, and again, we have to use the Gabler clause where anybody could win, and Gabler got a shout-out with Alaska tonight. But I think at this point, Dylan, I feel comfortable, and again, we could be wrong. I was wrong in 43. I feel comfortable saying I think only 2 people are drawing dead, and I think that's Liz and Venus. I think you're right. I think Q could still win based on who he's with. If we're going to rank people, I think, you have Marie and Charlie at 1 and 2, Kenzie at 3, maybe Ben and Q at 4 or 5. We can debate if Q or Ben has a higher chance. I think Ben has a higher chance than Q based on who he's sitting next to. The only 2 people that I think are drawing dead is after this meltdown, I just don't know if people are going to give Liz the respect. And I feel bad because I know we both love Venus. I think Venus is an amazing character. Dylan, I looked at the stat, actually. This is one of the only times where at the final 8, someone has not gotten a confessional. Venus was basically absent this whole episode. The only time she was on screen is when she went to go give Liz a hug and then like backed off when like Liz was freaking out.
That was unreal.
That was amazing. Like Venus just backs up. But other than that moment, Venus got almost no airtime tonight. And this is after her not only just being dismissed by people on the jury like Soda, Tevin, and Hunter, but people in the game don't really like Venus. No confessionals, and she's left out of the vote tonight. I think Venus is drawing dead and Liz is close, and then we can debate if you think Q and Ben are 4 or 5. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, I think if Q and Ben, I think if both of them sit with, if either one of them sits with Liz and Venus, I do think Ben and Q could still win.
Yes, right? if they sit with Liz and Venus, yes, I agree.
For Q to get to the end, or for Ben to get to the end with Liz and Venus, it would probably take them getting out both Charlie and Maria, right? Which would be the biggest moves of the season, kind of, depending on how it happens. So like I think that if they sit, unless I can't see a way that Venus or Liz like put themselves into the conversation. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, there's something about Q's edit that has me like questioning a lot of things with him that I can't get any read on it. Like I really cannot get a read on what happens to him in the end at all. I think he could go out next week and he could make it to the final 3 and come in second place, or I have no read on what the end game with Q is here. It's also possible that he sits next to both Charlie and Maria potentially in the end. What if maybe an Austin D situation happens in terms of like, you bring your number 1 ally to the final again. Maybe Charlie and Maria do that. And they end up splitting votes. Who knows? But I have no read on Q's end game at all. I thought I did. I thought I was like, after a few weeks ago, I was like, all right, he's got like 1 or 2 episodes left max. And now I'm like, he could go all the way, or he could still go next episode. I have no read on it.
Maybe this is a hot take, because as you've been talking, I just told you my rankings of the 7, and I had Q at like 5 for chances to win. Not to read the edit, but I almost feel like he could go as high as 4, or potentially even as high as 3, because I feel like with a story, and the jury loves a good story. The jury wants to vote for someone that they want to represent the season. And I know, like, Rick Devens was always putting on a show in front of the jury, and Q obviously is putting on a show in front of everybody. But like, I could be talked into a scenario, Dylan, where again, not Charlie. I think Charlie and Maria have run the season, so I think they win against anybody. But you could talk to me in a situation where Q is next to Liz, Venus, or Ben, or Kenzie, and Q could just get up there and make the argument like, look, I had antics. I was doing a lot of silly things. My target was this big, and it got so big, like I said, it disappeared. And you all discounted me, and I'm still here. I think he could win the game with that argument. The biggest problem that Q has is that one moment where he tried to like quit the game in the Tevin vote, because we learned afterwards that he was being genuine. He actually was like willing to fall on the sword. If it was not for that one thing, I think all these other Q antics, I think he could still win because people could be like, Q, we're impressed that you managed to get your way to the end. But I just don't know if the jury, if they don't respect like quitters, I don't know if they're going to respect Q trying to throw in the towel. But other than that, I could be talked into Q being like the fourth or even highest, third likeliest based on who he's with.
I think I agree with that. Yeah, like that's the one thing that like is going to be tough for him to overcome. Like he could frame it like yeah, like I offered my name up because I was willing to fall on the sword and I felt guilty in the moment, like it was a wrong thing to do. But you guys kept me there and I redeemed myself. We don't know the end, maybe he makes moves at the end of the game. We don't know. But yeah, it should be so interesting to see. Immunity challenge. Which we didn't talk about, a classic. Shout out to Charlie for training his grip strength. That I thought that was really interesting. It's like, all right, it's cool that we're not seeing somebody say that they just practiced all the puzzles, but instead like actually like physically trained for something specific and then it worked out. So that was cool. And then we kind of saw something here where, the rights negotiation fails again.
Jeff.
I'm over the rights negotiations, honestly. But that fails again, and then a small jar of rice offered for sit-outs, which again I think you alluded to this before, but that was clearly just designed for Liz to get any sort of food in her body. I think so. She gets her small jar of rice. Finally, she gets to eat. But yeah, Charlie's second immunity.
Yeah,
the whole rights negotiation thing is pretty funny, I gotta say. But I respect this cast so much for not willing to step up for rice, because I never would. You cannot give up your chance at immunity at any point for anything.
Well, Jeff has made it worse. Jeff is now trying to get too cute and say, "Fine,
you don't give up your vote." Yeah,
there's no shot.
Cyber Twitter would lose their mind if people were giving up votes for rice.
No, people would lose their minds, and there's a reason. I hope production's taking notes that the season has been good because there's been no advantages or idols being kind of like messed around with, and people aren't losing their votes. People haven't lost votes since like episode 5 or 6. So yeah. I hope they take notes and they realize why people are loving the season right now. We'll see. And you're right. This was really cool to see this classic wrist assured challenge that we've seen in the past. And I think you're right that people are going to be practicing grip strength now. And I think production also realized with the whole Carson effect, and even with Hunter practicing puzzles, Dylan, we haven't seen a puzzle since the Mergatory. We haven't seen a puzzle in a few weeks. So I think this is really shaping up to be like a change in how people prepare for the game and also how production makes the game as well. I'm sure Jeff in production has taken notes for 47 and 48, which are going to go film in a little bit. But yeah, no, I mean, I wasn't surprised Charlie won immunity. I felt like Charlie had pretty decent odds. I was shocked Tiffany looked so solid and then just kind of gave out. I actually thought Maria was going to win because I felt like this was a really good challenge for Maria to do well in. And she even had like that, I don't know if you saw, she had like the strategy where like she had like one overhand grip, one underhand grip, which I thought was going to work out well. But it might just come down to like you're holding 25% of your body weight and it just comes down to sheer grip strength and willpower. So
yeah. I thought she was gonna win, honestly, but I guess not. Charlie, yeah, shout out to him. One other thing that I saw people talking about in this episode, which I think is interesting. Mm-hmm. Never hear about the shot in the dark anymore, ever. Like, I'm wondering how much longer that's actually gonna be kept in the game. I obviously it was successful last season, so maybe they'll keep it and just it'll be there. But another like thing about this vote, right? If Tiffany assumed that everybody was voting for Q, there was absolutely no protection against the shot in the dark at all. with his vote. Like Q still has a shot in the dark. If he really thought all the votes were going on him, he could have easily just played the shot in the dark. If it was successful, then he could have chose who went home. So I just thought that's interesting that somebody pointed that out, because that the shot in the dark doesn't even cross my mind anymore with these votes. But clearly you would think it has to be like thought about out there on the islands, but we're not hearing anything about it. And there was absolutely no, in Tiffany's head, there was going to be no protection against it, right? She was just going to be okay with everybody putting their votes on Q. So I thought that was a little bit interesting as well. Like, just, we don't hear about the shot in the dark, and some of the players, I mean, it doesn't even seem like that they're accounting for it.
If they keep it in the game, I wonder if the Survivor Twitter discourse is going to maybe change the strategy. Because I've seen a bunch of people on Twitter say, like, for Hunter last week, where Hunter knew votes were coming his way and Hunter admitted he should have played it. But people were saying that the new strategy with Shot in the Dark, if you have an idol and you think votes are coming your way, you should almost like give yourself 2 chances at safety. Like, imagine if Hunter last week doesn't vote at all, plays a Shot in the Dark. If it lands, he gets to keep his idol another week. And if it doesn't land and he thinks he's in danger and I just give up my vote, I'll play my idol then. So I think people are trying to figure out new ways to use it. And even Emily last season created a new way to use Shot in the Dark by kind of leveraging it for a vote, where she was like, hey, if you guys keep me over Brandon, I'll give up my Shot in the Dark so you can show that I'm loyal. I think people are trying to evolve the strategy with it. And I think using it as on top of an idol, giving yourself 2 shots at it, might be actually pretty good. But yeah, we haven't seen it in a bit. It hasn't really been prevalent to the game. But I do think Jeff and production like it because they love these elements of risk. So I think it'll still stay.
Yeah, just an interesting thing that I wanted to bring up. And then anything else that you want to discuss before we head out?
Yeah, just 1 or 2 more quick things. Back to the reward for a second. I think the one thing we didn't talk about was like the whole sanctuary thing, because like, and Dylan, I texted you. I was like, I audibly gasped, and I even saw people on Twitter saying the best writers in Hollywood couldn't script this, where it's the exact burger that Liz wants. She doesn't get picked. She has a meltdown. By the way, quick little fun side note: when they left the challenge and Jeff turns to the camera, he's like, "That's Survivor. Apply now." They go on the reward, Dylan. They don't even eat the burger because they get so much food. They then have the gall to go back to camp and tell Liz to her face, "Oh, that burger that you love, we didn't even eat it." And I was in shock. Dylan, it was almost like The Office with, like, cringy moments where I almost felt like secondhand embarrassments. Like, I could not imagine not giving up I could not imagine this woman not having this burger, crying over it, and then saying to her face, "Oh yeah, I got chosen. I didn't even have it."
Absolute cinema. That's all I could say.
It
was unbelievable. It was literally, like you said, it was like literally like a script out of a show. So funny, just so funny. I cannot believe that they like admitted to her that they didn't eat it. Like, that is just absolutely insane.
I almost thought for a second that like they were going to bring a little bit back for her, but they not only didn't bring anything back, they also were like just said to her face, we didn't even eat it." And I feel like I don't know. I feel like Liz would have killed somebody at that point.
One more thing I want to mention. I saw one of the funniest tweets this week.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, production has the chance to do this in season 50. What is stopping them? And it was Survivor 50 has a chance to put these 2 players in the same tribe. What's stopping them? And it was a picture of Q and Tony. Can you imagine Q and Tony on one tribe? First of all, let me just say, Q has to be a lock for 50. He has to be.
Oh yeah,
just absolute iconic character all the way around. He has to play on Survivor 50. So, message to Survivor, he should be a lock. That's all.
Yeah, and like we said, as we get closer to 50, which is still a year away from filming, 2 years from us seeing it, we certainly will kind of go over either in a podcast off season or during the season, like who we think are great 50 players, like locks, whether they're like from the new era or the old era. And I'm sure we have plenty of time to kind of speculate about this. Yeah, at this point, we were saying last season, like Caleb, Kelly, well, D won if they bring back winners, but D obviously would be a lock if they bring back winners. We were going over a lot of great people from 45, 46. Like you said, it's got to be Q. It's got to be Venus. You can make an argument for some other people like Tiffany or like Tevin. There's a lot of great choices from this season too, but Q and Venus got to be at the top. Again, if Venus wants to return, we'll see if she wants to. But yeah, Q's got to be back there. Just wild. And one more thing I want to say too, Dylan, is that I'm always a sucker for great quotes. Always, like obviously, Coach on Exile Island, all-time quote. Probably one of my favorite quotes of all time is from Tom Westman in Heroes versus Villains, where they vote out Suri, and he's like, "Tomorrow we make our apologies. Tonight we make our move." I thought Maria, Dylan, I don't know if you know this with the episode title, Maria had a great quote where the episode title is Run the Red Light. And I thought that was actually really great from her, because when she's like, you know what, I want to get the green light to go after Tiffany, but if I keep waiting, the light may never turn green. So I'm gonna have to run the red lights. And I think that's so like wise of her to say. And that's why I like Maria a lot, because I've seen a bunch of people like Steven and former players say Survivor's all about timing, and making the wrong move at the wrong point can like cost you the game. But then there's times where like the timing just does not work out and you have to just take a big swing. So I give Maria a lot of credit for not only taking this big swing, but realizing like, if I keep waiting on Tiffany, it's never going to happen. So even though Kenzie's backing out, I'm going to go for it anyway. So
you're right. That's a great quote. And yeah, I think that's a great point. Really, Maria's been fantastic. Like really, she has been. So I'm excited to see how far she could go. And if she can get the job done at the end, because she has played a phenomenal game. Phenomenal.
She's played great. I think the last thing I would say before we wrap up, unless anyone in the chat has questions, is I think the final question for the season, now that we've kind of gotten past the Q and Tiffany saga, the biggest question of the season is now going to be, of course, do Charlie and Maria go full Malcolm and Denise, and do they ride it out, or do they turn on each other? Because Malcolm and Denise did keep loyal until the final four, and then once Scoopin won immunity, they kind of turned on each other and said, all right, it's either me or you. Now that we're in the era with fire making, the question is, do Charlie and Maria go full Tony and Sarah and compete in fire if it comes to that? If like it's Charlie, Maria, I don't know, Q and Venus, and then they go to fire? Or at some point, do Charlie and Maria be like, I've got to take that shot now to kind of differentiate myself? So let me ask you before we head out, do you think they're going to flip, or do you feel like at this point they're going full Malcolm and Denise and they're just going to stick to the end?
I think they're sticking to the end. I do. I think the most successful alliances in the new era, I mean, if you look at last season, right? You need a strong two-person alliance. You need it. And I think that people like, Kenzie wanted to blindside Tiffany so bad for what, right? Like you need a strong second person when the numbers get down. So I think Kenzie had a quote that was something like part of like a great Survivor resume is like blindsiding your number one ally. Like for what? Like for what? For what? Like you don't have to do that. And I think it would be smart for them to ride it out. So we'll see what happens.
I think you would agree, though, if somebody were to flip, I feel like it's much more likely that Charlie tries to take a shot at Maria. I feel like Maria at this point has set herself up really well where she doesn't have to take a shot. She can probably sit next to most people and win. I think people really respect Maria on the jury and in the game. If anyone were to flip, I think it would be Charlie to, in the next couple of weeks, say, she made that huge move on Tiffany. People like her a lot. I'm going to take a swing. Again, I agree with you. I don't think it's going to happen, but if anyone were to make the move, it would be Charlie instead of Maria.
I would not do it. I would not do it until Final Five if I were him. I think the other thing that is always like in my mind is like they made the Malcolm Denise comparison way back, right? Early in the pre-merge. If you remember last season, they did the little like Rob and Amber comparison for Austin and D, and they both get to the end. D ends up winning over Austin. That always is in the back of my head. Like maybe they both do go to Final Four, and one of them is a fallen angel, and the other one wins the game. Like you never know. So I think for both their games, though, I think it's smart to stick together till at least the Final Five.
I think the big question next week, Dylan, not only again will they stick together, but like, I'm going to be curious next week if Charlie's name comes up, because at this point, when you win 2 in a row, people got to start saying your name. And if they don't say Charlie's name, that just gives me more evidence that Charlie's playing a really great game like Maria, where no one is saying their names. because imagine if next week like Q wins immunity or Kenzie wins immunity. If no one's saying Charlie's name, that's a mistake. For this guy to be playing a good strategic game, very well liked, and he won 2 in a row, and you're not even looking at him, that's a big mistake. So I do think next week that Charlie and Maria will stay loyal, but I'd be shocked if people aren't at least looking at Charlie next week, maybe. Or
yeah,
Maria.
they have to. They absolutely have to.
Have to.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think that's all we got for today. Yep. We'll be back Sunday of next week to recap episode 11, and I'm excited to see it this week. Final 7.
I'm excited, Dylan. We're almost done. Final 7.
Yep.
Grab your torches and head back to camp.
Good night.